So, I suppose like a recap of what all is going on and different things I've mentioned is in order at this point. Alright, yeah. Last couple weeks I kind of been, mostly hopping around to different various areas, pools, the beach and things of this nature, as it is extremely hot outside, and that helps greatly. But yeah, so so the big next step that I'm seeing of what I've kind of mentioned, but I hadn't gotten it as solid as I have it now in knowing, is how you directly correlate the cognitive functions with the zodiac signs, seeing as the nature of how you could be any type and have a different sign in all these different areas to begin with, and how it's built off of a system where there's a sign that contains all other signs in it. It can be very confusing to determine which bit or piece of this function is really coming from this quality, because you got a water sign, that's emotion, so does that mean that goes with feeling automatically, or does that go with things of this nature? And what I've come to realize is, instead of looking at it like you look at these different qualities from the signs and planets and so on and so forth as different divisions of things that you add up that equate to one of these functions, it's more like the functions are an extra layer. Like if you were going to add another set of planets, or if there was something else to the solar system, or there was almost like you're adding asteroids, but it's like if there was another circle on top of it, kind of. But not necessarily, because it's really just certain sections of the circle that correlate directly to each function in the stack order. And because that, for instance, through what I labeled before is, first house is first, 11th house is second, third house is third, fourth house is the fourth function, so on and so forth. In that video, check that out as a reference point. Then it's more like it's an overlay that occurs through knowing each one of them separately. Like if for instance, that just keep it simple, the first house is the first function, then that sign that's also in the first house is also going to be the area that's going to be the kind of that function that you're using, instead of it being Aquarius or Taurus are both thinking signs, so on and so forth. Or the air signs in general are thinking signs, or Gemini, Libra, Aquarius are all air signs, so that means that they're logical. It's like a different terminology altogether, but at the same time it's it fits into it. So just for instance, how you can have, you could be a thinker in MBTI, but then you're a feeler in the Enneagram. That kind of thing. But those certain types of considerations that you give for, or qualities that sign has, when you're describing someone using that function, if there happens to be an overlap, say you have you're an introverted feeler and you judge things based on your own, using your own, feeling judgment, then it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have, a feeling sign, like you could have introverted feeling in Cancer, which is, an emotional sensitive sign, which would seem upon reading it what it would relate to, kind of off the first bet, when you're thinking about doing it from that angle, but it's really, it's a whole other layer. So you can have, introverted thinking of any sign, and I think with Eric Thor, like when he's with his system of like the colors, it's kind of like that, like it's still what it is, but it has like, you can have even this other flavor to it. So and also I want to mention that there seems to be, when you have someone that has both of those qualities the same, like say, which they could have it, somewhere completely different in their chart, but if it's the same overlay, like say for instance, I have introverted sensing that is, Cancer, like, if you had like, for instance, like, I don't know, an ISFJ or ISTJ, like Cancer rising, we'd both have Cancer introverted sensing, and and if that's the case, then there's almost like, if you hear people talking about like, I don't know if I've mentioned it on here before in this way, but like when you hear people talking about like people being telepathic, of course there's other forms of it, but if you're this similar in this manner, this means that you are using the same function for the same purpose. And even though you might have a different routine, since you both care about the same thing, there's a, like I said before, there's a peak, or there's a top point of the most research that's been done. So if you're both working on the same thing, then there can be things that come out that like start to appear like it's like telepathy, because you're working on the same thing, making like the same leaps, realizing the same things. But it's like with the Pisces sign, it's like there's this collective that it all, like a reservoir of what it all sits in and like collects up to, and then that affects people's, or it's directly seen or affects like people's unconscious mind, because it's like all the imaginations, dreams, images that they've seen up until this, collectively up till this point. And the reason that, probably I've explored this to see this is because I myself have extroverted intuition, like Piscean extroverted intuition. So I've like looked at like these different possibilities of different like, ways or different like applications to these imaginations. And plus I've, explored it a bit like through like things like astral projection and things of that nature, even though I haven't gone like super deep into it, which is probably something more that, or maybe I just haven't done it in general due to, not exploring it like I should have, towards like thinking like, a lot of other people that it's, too far out there or whatever. Maybe that's due to the Taurus nature as well. But, you know, through actually exploring it, you know, I've seen like the validity to it, and I've also seen how when you have terms like people talking about like reptilians or you know, aliens or whatever, having contact with them, it's like it's literally true, but it's made true through like someone reasoning it out to a certain point where that's the language that you would use to describe that event. Especially if they're trying to say it in a polite manner where it would be accepted. But then, you know, the truth sometimes, like, you have to go so deep into making sure that you don't, you know, strike a wrong chord in anyone, that ironically you can go so deep into trying to translate that you end up seeming like the person's crazy because you're trying to accommodate for all the other viewpoints and perspectives, including the people that are a lot different than you, that you may call crazy, even though everything's energy and vibration. So it's literally just an expression of a, you know, it's all expression. I can see the argument being made there of like, okay, so is it okay to kill people or, you know, something like that? Because that's just an expression, right? But, you know, obviously that's an unhealthy expression. Now, how do you define what's unhealthy? Well, there's a progression. Let me stop this yet again. All right.